each other, avoiding the questions asked of one another. Now, what we just went through obviously was not an exhaustive list of the topics and issues discussed, but we'll touch on more as we do the fact check. So these fact checks are in no particular order, but we're going to start with Walls saying, quote, Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. This is false. Project 2025 does not call for a registry of pregnancies. It does call for federal agencies to collect more accurate data regarding abortion. So this includes how many abortions take, at what gestational age of the child, for what reason, the mother's state of residence, and by what method. Also important to note here is the fact that Trump and Vance have distanced themselves from Project 2025, so these abortion policies laid out in Project 2025 aren't necessarily policies Trump and or Vance agree with. It is true that many of the authors of Project 2025 served in Trump's administration, and he is close with the Heritage Foundation, as many previous Republican presidents are. But if you are interested in learning Trump's agenda, it's a much lesser known about agenda because Project 2025 has been such, has been so in the spotlight. It's called Agenda 47, and you can find that on his website. Moving on, Vance claimed that 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. This claim does have some truth to it, but it is a bit misleading. Generally, immigration, including illegal immigration, contributes to population growth and therefore to demand for housing. And research indicate that a growth in immigration under the Biden administration is one factor fueling housing demand. However, economists and housing experts have said the primary reason for the high prices in the housing market is from a decline in new residential construction. Walls claimed Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and then added, quote, in the last year as president, end quote. First part of that claim is false, second part is true. First off, we don't have access to all of Trump's tax records for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
We do know, according to a release of his 2015 to 2019 tax returns, that Trump has paid federal taxes in the last 15 years. In 2018, he paid just under $1 million in federal income tax. However, in 2020, his last year as president, he did not pay any federal income tax, and this is because he reported losing more money than he made. So yes, Trump has paid federal taxes in the last 15 years, but he did not pay federal taxes his last year as president. Vance claimed that offshoring manufacturing bases to China has not made goods less expensive. This is false. By sending production to China, companies can pay lower wages and therefore charge American consumers far less for their products. Studies have shown that since China's entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001, U.S. prices have fallen substantially. Vance also claimed, quote, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost, end quote. This claim needs context, and its validity really depends on how you define loss. So the claim likely stems from an August Watchdog report that said, in the last 5 years, more than 32,000 unaccompanied minors who illegally entered the United States had not shown up for their immigration court hearings, and more than 291,000 didn't receive their summons to appear in court. The purpose of that report was to detail a quote-unquote urgent issue with how immigration officials are handling cases involving unaccompanied migrant children. By law, the HHS is responsible for the care of unaccompanied migrant children. So after they are initially taken into custody, it's ICE's role to transfer those children to HHS, which then often places them in shelters or qualified homes. But the report was essentially saying that ICE and the HHS aren't doing their jobs adequately because so many children had either not been placed into immigration proceedings, hadn't been served their summons, or hadn't shown up for court hearings. So again, it depends how you define loss, but that's the context there. Speaking of immigration, Walls claimed that border crossings are down compared to when Trump left office. Consider the last 2 months of this year and compare them to the last 2 months of Trump's presidency. As we know, because of Biden's June proclamation restricting asylum at the border encounters have dropped significantly. And currently, border encounters are less than what they were in the last month of Trump's administration. But when we compare border crossings under each administration overall, we know that they are not the same. To illustrate using numbers, this past August, migrant apprehensions at the border were 58,000 office apprehensions along the border were 75,316. However, yearly apprehensions at the border reached record highs under Biden, and generally speaking, border encounters under Trump's administration were much lower than the encounters under Biden's. In fiscal year 2023, the yearly apprehensions reached 2.2 million. Under Trump's administration, the year with the highest annual apprehensions was 2019, when the number reached just 852,000. And speaking of the border, Walz claimed that Trump built less than 2% of the border wall despite promising a, quote, big, beautiful wall. This is misleading. So Walz's campaign pointed to a January 2021 report in support of its claim that said under Trump, 52 miles of, quote-unquote, new primary wall were built, plus 33 miles of, quote, new secondary wall, end quote. That report did not include sections in which existing barriers were replaced or reinforced. So including those sections, Trump built 458 total miles, or about 23%, and 23% is the number used by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Vance claimed Iran has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets by the Biden-Harris administration. This is false. Vance seems to be referencing, at least in part, the Obama administration's 2015 Iran nuclear deal, which allowed for a total of $100 billion to be unfrozen if Iran completed certain nuclear steps, but the agreement fell apart because those steps weren't completed, and only half of those assets were ultimately unfrozen, so roughly $50 billion. Biden was obviously VP at this time. Harris was not involved in that administration. In 2018, during Trump's administration, Iran was given access to about $10 billion of frozen assets, and later under Biden's administration, that Trump deal was extended, which released another $10 billion in assets to Iran, and most recently, in 2023, another $6 billion of Iranian assets were released as part of a prisoner exchange. So if we total up all of these releases, Iran has had about $76 billion in assets unfrozen by the U.S., but not by the Biden-Harris administration specifically. Vance, in referencing a Minnesota law enacted by Walz, said the law says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, that doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to the baby. Let's add some context here. Walz signed a new state law in 2023 that made changes to an existing Minnesota law when it comes to medical care for infants that are quote-unquote born alive after an abortion. Both the previous version and the new version of that law say that a baby that is born alive must be fully recognized as a human person and afforded the protections that are otherwise afforded to humans. The change that was made, though, updated the language to say that when a baby is born alive, the medical personnel are required to take all reasonable measures to, quote, care for, end quote, the infant. Previously, the language said medical personnel must take all reasonable measures to, quote, preserve the life and health, end quote, of the infant. So that is the change that Vance was referring to. And finally, last fact check, Walz was asked about a previous statement he made about being in China during the deadly Tiananmen Square protest in 1989. The reason he was asked about it is because various news reports had placed him in Nebraska at the time of the protest, not China, like he said. So the point of Walz was for him to explain the discrepancy between his account and the reports from the news outlets. His answer didn't answer the question at all, so the moderator repeated it again after his 2 minutes, and Walz responded with, quote, all I said on this is that I got there that summer and misspoke on this. That's what I said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests and went in, and from that I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance, end quote. So essentially, just to give you the full story here, back in 2014 in a congressional hearing, Walz specifically spoke about his time in Hong Kong in May 1989 during the Tiananmen protest. He proceeded to go into detail about his time spent in Hong Kong at this time. Later, in a June 2019 radio interview, he also said he was in Hong Kong in May and June, including on the day the massacre occurred. He said, quote, I was in Hong Kong on June 4th, 1989, when of course Tiananmen Square happened, and I was in China after that, end quote. These reports very recently surfaced which placed Walz in the press, not Hong Kong. So as he clarified on Tuesday, his statements about being in Hong Kong at the time of the protest were not true. As you guys know, I have been abroad for a few weeks now, but I'm getting ready to head home, and let me tell you, I cannot wait to get back on my routine. I told you guys a couple of weeks ago that I already have my HelloFresh meals scheduled to be delivered because I'm not messing around once I get back. I just want my meals to show up on my doorstep without having to even think about it. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients delivered straight to your door, which makes life so easy, especially with the instructions that come with each meal, which walk you through each step of the cooking process. I'm no chef, okay, so the simplicity of the instructions is everything to me. I was just telling someone the other day how I'm so excited to get into the fall vibe once I'm home, and I remembered that the HelloFresh meals are seasonal, which means that the meals I'll be getting delivered will also help me channel that fall cozy vibe. So whether you're just wanting to cozy up with a nice dinner on the couch this fall, or simply wanting some game day snacks now that football season is here, HelloFresh has a variety of recipes for you. There are so many options to choose from, and the best part is you can get 10 free meals at hellofresh.com/free unbiased. Applied across 7 boxes, new subscribers only, varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to hellofresh.com/free unbiased. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
What's up, guys? It's the champ. Calling out here to talk to you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks, the best place to make real money when it comes to football. Run the game on Prize Picks.
Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly from your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive a $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code Spotify. That's code Spotify on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly for a $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
That was your debate recap, and now we can move on to quick hitters. I just have a few quick hitters for you today, but the quick hitters will be a little bit lengthier than usual. It's just that this episode is already longer than usual, so I just wanted to stick to a few. The first is that the Biden administration announced earlier this week that it will expand its asylum restrictions at the border. As we discussed in June, Biden signed a proclamation that cut off access to asylum at the border for those who cross between lawful ports of entry if border encounters exceeded a 2,500 average over the course of a week. The administration has now finalized a rule which makes the policy a bit more permanent and in some sense even tougher. So previously under Biden's proclamation, asylum processing could restart once border crossings averaged 1,500